What is happening, everyone? You might not know it because the videos have been coming out like usual, but this is the first video that I have shot in well over a month. I think it's been 35 days. So some of you guys don't know, I took a little bit of a break, pre-shot all those videos, and it feels weird to be back doing this. So this video might be kind of all over the place, but we're going to go ahead and jump on into this one. I hope you guys have all been doing great. Obviously, a lot of crazy stuff going on, and I'll probably talk some more at the end, just kind of talk to you guys. But just for today's video, what I want to talk about is the hype and the mystique of a vintage guitar a lie? Like, are they any better? Are they worse? Like, kind of, what's my experience with them? And we're gonna kind of talk about what is even considered a vintage guitar. Because some people maybe wouldn't even consider like what I'm playing like a true vintage. Like, you might think it needs to be 50s or 60s. So we're gonna talk about that. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Would you just prefer a more modern guitar? We're gonna dive onto those. I'd be really curious to know your guys' experience, and I'm just gonna try to get back in the swing of things and see how well this video goes. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I'll do some playing. We'll chat about 3 different guitars here, and let's just go. Alright, so let's just go ahead and talk about the first thing here, and that is, are all vintage guitars good? Are they just, and if you can get an old one, they're great. And I actually think that's, I'd say there are fewer ones that are great initially versus, like anyone you pick up. Because I think you're going to probably be disappointed, as I have been, with a lot of vintage guitars, because a lot of times they'll have the original frets on them, they'll be worn down, really hard to play, not really set up, because people like to just leave them alone. I think if you're going into getting an older guitar, you have to be in the mindset, especially if you're getting one from the 50s and 60s, that it's going to need some work. So you have to be able to kind of like see through that stuff. If you're the type of person who wants a guitar that instantly just plays like butter, is set up perfectly, I think you're more suited for modern guitars. Unless you're okay or have the knowledge to, fix a guitar. Like my Strat needs frets on it really, really bad. And but I love the way the guitar feels and sounds. So I'm like, okay, eventually I'm gonna put frets on it, and then it'll get that extra little 10% in there. Where I'm like, then it's perfect. It's good to go. So I think you do have to always be willing to go into it, knowing that odds are you're not gonna just pick up an old guitar. It's gonna be perfect. It's gonna blow your mind right away. There are some of those out there, but I think they're in the minority. Versus you're going to find some that just need some work, need some, TLC, and I think that's just kind of like the overall misconception that any old instrument you pick up is just going to be this like life-altering moment. Because I've played plenty of them that I didn't like. I'm going to be jumping back and forth between guitars here for a second. So you'll have to, like I said, I'm rusty, guys. I'm rusty. Okay, so let's talk about this guitar. Now, you guys have seen plenty of videos, but it's not really a video so much about these guitars. I just thought I would throw this in here because I don't know what people consider vintage. I think technically for a store to list something as vintage, it needs to be at least 20 years old. So both my 335 and my Les Paul are 79s. Now the Strat's is 63, so to me that is vintage. I consider these to be vintage, but I think true collectors and stuff probably are going to be more like, no, it needs to be like 50s and 60s. So it just depends. So if you're one of those people, that's totally fine. Just ignore everything I say about these guitars. But that was something I thought I would throw in here. Now, are they made better? Now, like I said, mine's from the 70s, and the 70s has just a bad rep on both sides of Gibson and Fender. And I honestly haven't had that many bad ones from the 70s. I haven't played a lot of 70s Strats. I've played a few of them. I wouldn't say they were bad, but they needed stuff, and there's certainly different things I don't like. I don't like truss rod. But to me, this Les Paul, now this one's kind of an exception because it's not a pancake body, which again I don't think that changes anything. But I don't think that this is necessarily made any better. I think nowadays they're probably technology has incrementally gotten better with guitars and how they're manufactured, obviously with Plek machines and different radiuses now that they do, and stainless steel frets if you're kind of that person. So I don't know if I would say that these are made any better. I think they're just made differently. They have a different feel to them than what modern guitars do. And even this one, like I said, some people might not consider this to even be old enough to be vintage, but it's going to be 41 this year, and it doesn't feel like any other Les Paul I've ever played, other than just like some like 70s Les Pauls. Like when I played some other of the, I think, what did Austin have? He had a 70, I think it was a 78 or 79 standard, and it reminded me of this one. Now this one still feels different. I think what's happened with modern guitars is they've gotten very, very good at duplicating the same guitar over and over again. So I think you probably don't have those kind of like more subtle characteristics in a modern guitar. When you get older ones, they were, I don't know if more unreliable is the term to use, but they were just kind of more, they weren't so perfected, So I think that they do feel different. Like you're going to have way more variances in a Strat, back in the 50s and 60s than what you did nowadays. Nowadays, they can just like pump out the same exact guitar every single time. I think it's probably because there's more machines involved and less people. So I think that these old guitars do feel different. I don't know if they're any better. I think that whatever one is inspiring you to play is better. So if you have an old guitar that's just, you can't revive it, then that's probably not the way to go. So sorry, got a little, like I said, I'm rusty. I'm all over the place today. So yeah, so I don't know if you consider these vintage. I do think that they feel pretty noticeably different. Better or worse, it's always going to be up to the player to decide that kind of stuff. Tone. Do older guitars sound better? Now again, this one is also a 79, just like my Les Paul, so some people could not consider it to be vintage. But, I think that they do have a little bit different sound. Something happens, I feel like, over years of a pickup sitting, and this is going to be something that can happen nowadays, because, you have to remember, every old guitar started as new at some point. At some point it was the new guitar, so a Strat, Les Paul, Mayonnaise, Schecter, any of that stuff that we have today, well, hang on to that thing. Eventually it's going to be vintage as well. And I think that what happens a lot of times is the way the coils and stuff age in pickups, I think it just changes the way that the pickups, whether, I see, and I don't know a whole lot about this stuff, this is just my mind working. I think that it does change the way this stuff is done. Now this guitar is loaded with really hot pickups, and these were only made for a couple years because they just really didn't catch on, which I'm going to do a separate video about this guitar that I have an idea for. But I do think that they sound different, again, better, worse, who knows. So I think that's more up to each their own. The best thing you can do is to play a bunch of them. Like I said, you have to remember that a lot of old guitars, unless it's like a full refin, refret, everything done to it, they might not play the best, and you might need to get that stuff done to them. So you just kind of have to listen. To me, like I said, with the Strat or any of these, like I'm just like really listening to the sound of it. Like I'm like, okay, I really like the way this guitar sounds. Because like I said, I've played other ones where I've just plugged in and they just sound dead. They don't really like ring out, and you kind of, especially if you're buying them sight unseen, you just have to, I shouldn't say sight unseen, but like not playing them, you're kind of rolling the dice. But now lucky with Reverb, if they have return policies and stuff, if you don't mind eating shipping, then just do it. And the final thing, which I don't remember. I had it, but I got like tuned out playing. Okay. I'm like, what was the last thing I was talking about? Is, you know, what I think a lot of people care about when they get an old guitar is, for one, what does that guitar mean to you? Now, like I said, I don't know if I could pick this guitar out in a lineup against other Strats. I'm sure you could make a modern Strat sound so close to an old Strat that they're indistinguishable. But that's not really so much what it meant to me. To me, this was a dream guitar. If you've seen the video about this guitar, you know, it turned into be so much more than what I ever could have hoped for. You know, discovering the story of this guitar. But a lot of it is, what does it mean to you as a player? So, like I said, to me, I've always wanted an old Strat. Like that's the one thing. Even though I play Les Pauls, I do all this other stuff, but an old Strat, a Strat's just what I started on. You know, that's kind of always been there. So it's always been that, like, that dream guitar, like the one guitar I could think of is, you know, obviously an old Les Paul and an old Strat. So it kind of meant a lot to me. And I think what really appeals to a lot of people is that these old guitars just have stories. Now, in my case, I got to, like, hear the whole story, which was, you know, honestly, like a 1 in a million chance that would even happen. And I'm really fortunate that Jim shared all the stuff with me that he did. One thing to, like, consider about this stuff is, like I said, is you know, now you're adding your own story to it. And kind of to go back and reiterate what I said before is that all old guitars started as new guitars at some point. And guitars are really, really cool because they last forever. You know, unless you set them on fire or, you know, or break them, they'll hang in there. You know, they really will just last a lifetime. And, you know, you're going to add your story to it. If you get a new guitar, think of it as you're starting the story with that one. You know, just like any guitar had to have its story started, you're doing that with it now. So, you know, I think whether you like old guitars, new guitars, I think an old guitar is cool because it already has a story, you know. And you're just kind of like the caretaker of the guitar for now. So, like I said, with this guitar, you know, it's been building its story long before I was ever alive. And, you know, hopefully it gets to stay here with me for a long time. And then it'll go on to someone else. Like maybe my son will, you know, want the guitar or something. And then it'll start its, you know, another new story. But that's the really cool thing about these guitars. Because, you know, they're made to, they just last. You know, as long as you can put new frets on them. And like I said, nowadays with stainless steel, you know, you can put frets on them and pretty much never have to do it again. And it's just, I don't know, like I said, I think the story aspect is really like the final piece of the puzzle to a guitar, because you have to, you know, if you watch like my buddy Nick from Nick the Riff, he is like really, really cool because he does all these, he gets these kind of like a little bit whooped on guitars and he brings them back to life. So that kind of stuff is really exciting. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, so you won't be seeing me do that, but I guess we'll kind of end it there. Sorry, probably long-winded, talked too much. Look, the camera turned off. That's how I know I'm rusty. The camera finally just shut off because it took too long. So other than that, guys, I'm going to bounce out here. I'm talking way too much. Thank you guys all so much for being so cool with the break. I hope you enjoyed the videos. I'm really excited to get back to making more videos now. If you would, subscribe. And I hope you're all just staying safe out there. You know, have a great rest of your day. I'm going to lay down some rhythm here for you. And just, you know, jam along if you want to. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, new videos, you know, happening all the time as always. So I'll see you guys